Hey everybody, welcome back to the Find and Follow podcast. I want to thank you guys. We're here on episode 3. It's a new year. I'm excited. We've had a lot of people listening, a lot of people giving feedback. I very, very much appreciate it. We're kicking off the new year with a fun one. I brought in Steve Echternach. He's one of our church's financial coaches, and he came in to talk about finances. Maybe you're looking at your year. Maybe you're looking at a vacation you want to do in the summer. Maybe you're looking at, maybe this is the year you want to buy a house, or you have some other financial goal that you're working on. Well, talking about finances is a path towards figuring that type of stuff out. So I had Steve in, we talked about it. We talked about, some different baby steps, some different ideas that we can all apply to our finances so that we can, live the lives that we want to live and manage our money in the way that honors God and the way that plans for our future. Just as a quick note, we didn't, plan this intentionally, but we do have a Financial Peace University. So if you like this, if you're into this, we do have a Financial Peace University that dives into a lot of these concepts closer, and that's coming up on January 21st. So you're hearing this podcast on January 9th, and if you go to gccws.net/classes, you can sign up for Financial Peace University, and you can dive into these things deeper with your spouse, or if you're single, with yourself, and your fiance or what have you. And you can dive into these things, and you can set a good financial foundation for your future. But I've talked a lot, so here's Steve. All right, so we're here with Steve Echternach, who helps lead the financial coaching, financial counseling ministry here at Grace Community Church. Steve, why don't you talk a little bit about who you are and kind of how you got into doing this?
Well, Addison, I'm been doing it now for about, I'm guessing it's about 15 years, and started doing it, was kind of drawn to it in my previous career. I was the police chief in Strasburg Borough. I'd been doing that for 38 years, and one of the things I found was in a lot of our family dysfunction and challenges that, as I related to it, it turned out that it was, when you peel the onion back, it looked to me that it was often related to finance and things of that nature. And I did some research, read some books, found an organization called Ramsey, Dave Ramsey at the time, now it's Ramsey Solutions, and ended up going to their coaches training back in 2011, I think it was. And was edifying in that when I did it, I had to do their whole financial piece, which used to be longer than what it is now. And when I did that class, I had to do it in video before I went to the counselor training. And I ended up, my poor wife, I'm going back every night because I had 16 videos to do in 14 nights. And I'd go back to the den and do that, and I'd call him and say, hey, you need to come back and hear this guy. Because at that point, I'd not seen his podcasts or his videos. And it was funny because it turned out that we were living the way Dave was teaching and had been for years. And it's basically doing it the way Grandma did it and living within your means and doing it from a biblical stewardship perspective, doing it the way you would think the Lord would want you to do it. And here I found out Dave's making a pretty good living teaching that and putting it into a package. And that's when we found him, and was very edifying. I went to the training, and then ever since have been doing coaching and counseling for churches and teaching financial peace in churches.
Right. So it comes from a place of, hey, we want to protect you kind of from the possibility of what comes, because I think one thing, I actually took that same training, the 16-week version, back in, that would have been 2009, 2010 area. We did it as part of the college program I was in. And I think one thing he says is, when you make these choices, not every emergency has to be a financial emergency. And what I'm hearing you say is that plays out into sometimes arguing and fighting, and when things become financial emergencies, it just compounds the stress.
It does. I was just with a lady this morning in my job that I'm in now, and it was just ironic that it is a financial issue that is causing significant dysfunction within their family unit, to the point where there could be serious ramifications because of that. I just see that, and most of the time it's relative to people just don't have a plan or a level of awareness. Today, I would submit to you, everything is in a sound bite. Whatever we can snip or catch, and boom, you listen to it, and it's over. and you move on to the next one. And my thing on finance particularly is you don't need to be in crisis, but you do need to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you're going to plan to fail. And so if you develop a plan, and I get it. It's not easy if you've never done that, if you didn't grow up that way or you just haven't practiced it. It seems like it's like a ball and chain. Budget. That's like a curse word in a lot of houses. They don't want to listen to it. Well, I'm not saying it has to be. A budget gives you permission to spend. You know, you need to plan a budget so that you can do the stuff you need to do, but you need to live within your means. We stay within our means. You stay within the bumpers, and then you can just you just do well because you do it the way God would intend you to do it.
So let me ask you, maybe somebody here is, okay, I'm sitting down, listening to a thing about finances, and they would say, oh yeah, of course, it's a budget, it's living within my means. I would guess that reactions are kind of twofold. On one side, somebody's saying, well, I feel judged by that, I feel whatever. And then on the other side, they're saying, well, that's easy for someone else to say, but single income home, a challenge for working, a lack of training, a lack of skills. If I sat down and wrote out a budget, all it would tell me was, oh, cool, I can't afford rent.
Right. I understood.
What do you say to somebody who's, and I'm not trying to counter you, I'm just saying, what would you say to somebody in that position?
Absolutely. And that is, it feels very constraining when you first look at it. But if you start to plan and you document what your needs are, and we would tell you, you provide a roof over your head, basic transportation, food, and a little bit of clothing to get by, and you start from that, and then you build out your budget. And you always need to be looking at the tithe piece of it too, because we give, and I would teach from the perspective from the first fruits, that we take care of the Lord's portion first, and then we move on from that. And then as you build that out and you practice it, and it takes time. Nobody's going to learn to budget in 30 days. You start doing it, and that's why Financial Peace is still 9 weeks long, is it gives almost 3 months to get into the practice of doing it. And you work through it, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to come back and say, oh, well, geez, I wasn't able to do this. I had to take from that. But it's getting onto the premise that you're not borrowing from everybody. The first there's several steps, and the first step is $1,000 cash put away,
right,
as an emergency fund, so that you can then you're going to start paying off all your debt. See, the problem today is people live, and the data coming out of the Fed on what the credit card debt is in this country, it's just staggering that people are living on borrowed money all the time at 25% interest. Whereas if you can reverse that paradigm and turn it around where you're using your money instead of somebody else's, that's all money that goes back in your pocket, that's back in your budget.
Yeah, I think that's helpful when you think about credit cards, because if I could get an investment that would yield 18% year over year, I would put as much money as possible into it. Right. And it's the reason why I'm chuckling to myself is a credit card is a negative 18% year over year investment.
Absolutely. At 25% mostly now.
But depending on, where you're at.
And if you were getting 18% on your money, you'd be a very happy person. I mean, right. I'm happy around 10, 12. But,
right. Yeah, I think the number for, like they say, keeping up with inflation and gaining is like 11 or, you know what I mean, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I just always think that's a fascinating thing. So why do you think that we maybe as people don't tend to talk about money? Because I think like we're in a PA Dutch culture, and I'm not asking
you don't talk about money or sex. Right. Like, two things you don't talk about.
Right.
And it's because there's a stigma associated with it. I feel that as a financial coach and a financial teacher when it comes to FPU, I want people to come to the class because there's a benefit to knowledge. And if you have a better understanding, and we're not selling anything, that's the other side of it. We're not giving a free steak dinner to come to the class to go, get, because there's a lot of folks out there that take advantage of people, and it's better than it used to be, but it's still a challenge. And the idea is that if you can get into a program and you can get knowledge is power, in my opinion. And so if you're learning information, I've taught probably now, I'm over 20 times, maybe 25, I don't know, I've stopped counting, times I've facilitated Financial Peace University. Here's what I do know. Every time I do it, I pick a nugget up that I didn't have before.
Right.
I learn from the students as much as they get from me because it's beneficial. And you got to be aware. It's easy today to just kind of get in a cocoon, and you really don't pay any attention till all of a sudden I'm 5 or 10 years out from retirement. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to retire. It's a little bit like, I got news. We're recording this somewhere late October, beginning of November. Christmas is coming.
Oh, yeah.
It's December 25th. And people panic. It's like,
comes every year.
We used to do Christmas clubs. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Okay.
Well, I remember layaway, but
the banks used to have a Christmas club, but the banks figured out that they could make more money by loaning you the money at Christmas than letting you save the money up through the year. And you used to put $25 a week or $10 a week, whatever, into a Christmas club. And the end of November, the bank would send you a check for the balance with a little bit of interest on it.
Wow.
They don't do that anymore because they make more money taking advantage of you. That's why the bank's buildings are bigger than yours.
Well, and that's one thing I always do find interesting is this topic of debt and the value of debt. The amount of money that's been made by, like, I think it was General Electric started a credit line, like, and, I'm going to be bad on the year, but it was a Jack Welch project, and they made absurd amounts of money off of it.
J.C. Penney did
the
same thing, and then they spin these off, get spun off into credit card companies or whatever, and they've been very profitable for these organizations. I get it. I don't begrudge them that.
Right.
It's good business.
No.
But the idea is that they've taken advantage of folks. They're not as bad as the payday lender, but some of them are pretty close. There's a lot of credit card debt out there that needs to be managed.
Let's just go down one thread real quick, just because I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I know what Dave's thoughts would be, but somebody would say, well, we use a credit card super responsibly. We pay it off completely every month, and we use travel points. We use, et cetera, et cetera. The juice not worth the squeeze for you, or?
I would never do it for anything other than cash. Okay, because you're never going to, they make money on the airline points, they don't get used. I mean, that's the reality. Here's what I do know. And if you've done Dave Ramsey, he's study of millionaires, first generation millionaires. What they will tell you is nobody made their money by doing that. Now, is that good, smart business? I guess, as long as you can absolutely say unequivocally that you've never carried a balance. I can tell you that in 35 years, Mim and Steve Echternach have never had a balance on a credit card. And if we do, it's gone because we don't play that game. And it is a game. And so the reality is for most folks, it's better not to, you're playing with fire.
Sure.
And so do you want to get burned or not? And unfortunately, too many people get burned.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've talked about having a plan, the value of having a plan. We've talked about, FPU and how that can kind of give you a plan. Talked about credit cards a little bit, how they're kind of a reverse drain on really a lot of your goals, and they'll stack on top of each other. If somebody's coming to you and, they're, hey, maybe, hey, we just added an income to our family. We want to make sure we manage this well. Or they're saying, hey, we just got married and we want to, start our family. What are kind of some just 101 tips that you would say for that person?
Well, the biggest thing is number one, you got to have the plan, and you got to work on the plan, and then you need to talk about the plan. We do this with couples, and Grace Community Church is very good at. We require all folks getting married through here to meet with one of us financial coaches in advance to just make sure to help you make sure you've got a plan and you're on the same page, so to speak. Communications in a marriage is the most important thing, where the husband and wife are talking to each other about the finance and honestly doing and deliberately doing it. See, the problem is we don't do that. And here's what I would say my children would tell you is, Mom and Dad fight. We're just like any other couple. We have our differences occasionally. But what they have never seen us do is fight about money, because we've always been on the same page. And that is mission critical to a successful marriage. A happy marriage to me is that you're on the same page and then you're very deliberate about it. You've got to have a deliberateness no matter what. And one of the things I like the most is when I get a chance to sit down with a couple that's not in crisis. See, because we don't do just crisis counseling. My preference is to do counseling or meet with folks and say, I just had a couple from church here come in and sit down because they're getting closer to and they just wanted to see if they're doing well. And guess what? They're doing very well. And that's a joy to me to have that opportunity. The benefit is I'll look at your investments and I'll say, hey, that's a great, hey, I wish I had some of that or whatever. And I'll share that information. But if you don't want to take my advice, I'm okay with that too. I mean,
right.
I give counsel, and if you want to accept it, great. And if you don't, I'm not going to be mad at you.
Yeah, and I think relative to, it's funny you talk about not growing up in a family that does it or, it being new to you. I think something for me that I noticed as a young person in a job and then maybe other people have noticed is you get that option for IRA matching or, 401k matching. And you say, oh, okay, that's nice, but I'm barely making it. I can't give up 3.5% of my income. That's whatever, if we use $100,000 as the income, $3,500 a year, I can't give that up. Explain a little about, I know it seems super basic, but what is a matching plan? Why is it a good way to spend a huge chunk of your money?
If you have an IRA or a 401 or a 457 and they provide a match, you always take the match. You always contribute enough to get the match because that's 100% gain on your money.
Right.
Boom, done. Then if you have a Roth option within your 401, 457, we would tell you to exercise that. You need to get to 15%. The rule is get to 15% of your gross income is what you should be setting aside for retirement. After you've paid off all your debt, after you've been through baby step 1, 2, and 3, then you should be looking at that. 3 to 6 months of living expenses. You got to have a budget to understand that. So you got to have that plan. And then you're putting money away for 455, 29s for college or whatever, for your kids if you need them to get for college. But here's what I do know. I don't know whether your kids are going to go to college. I know that someday you're going to be eligible to retire or or want to retire. And that's why you need to be looking at the retirement side. And again, it's match beats Roth, and then after you've maxed out your Roth, then you'd go to traditional if you've got the capacity to do that.
Sure. So what you're saying, baby steps, just for information. Baby steps are $1,000 in emergency fund.
Yep.
Paying off debt, what he calls the debt snowball.
Debt snowball, and you always go, I get it, you go smallest to largest because it's not a math problem. If it was a math problem, you wouldn't have put yourself in that situation, okay? So what you want to do is it's a psychological, it's a heart thing, it's a mind thing. You need to get to rolling, so you build that up. And one of the things I have found for folks is once they get on that bridge and they start working the steps, they get to the top and they really have done it and they're excited and pumped up. You keep that same momentum that you created paying the debt off now to build wealth and grow.
Right. And let's explain debt snowball really quick, because if I have a credit card that has 500, a credit card that has 1,000, a credit card that has 6,000, my brain goes, well, let's pay off the highest interest one because that's the one that's hurting me. But debt snowball says something different.
Debt snowball says you go after the smallest debt first. You put them up, and I tell people to write them on a piece of paper and stick them on their refrigerator, put them on their mirror in their bathroom, whatever they need to be focused on. And then you take all the money, you pay minimums on all, any extra left in your budget, you put it on the smallest one. Once you get rid of it, that rolls into the next one, and you just start to build momentum. You build a snowball rolling down the hill, and it really does work. I've watched it over the years with folks that I've worked with, and it's amazing. And then you really become empowered. You become excited. You become a gazelle. You're running.
Right.
And you're chasing it, and you're suddenly getting after it.
Yeah. No, that's really great. So let's just review, make sure kind of we've covered everything, because we are coming near the end a little bit, but we're not in any rush. We can go as long as we want. But talked about the need to have a plan. That plan, that again, Ramsey's baby steps are get a budget in place, $1,000 in emergency fund, pay down debt through a debt snowball approach, 3 to 6 months of living expenses, and then beginning to kind of invest in the next step. We talked about the reason people don't talk about this is maybe the idea of shame or feeling of, but no need for that. And then biggest tip, taking things like an IRA match, but mostly just having a plan.
Having a plan. Keeping engaged in what you're doing, looking at what's happening, making sure you're because here's the thing. We live so much in an instantaneous society. I want you to look out 5, 10, 30 years out on the horizon. That's where we need to be living and understanding. I get it. The Lord's going to take care of us, but the Lord is also instituting us to have a plan, to be aware, following biblical stewardship principles, putting away that 10% or whatever you're led to believe that you need to do as far as time. And because if you get yourself in this position, what will happen is you're going, if the people of God could get themselves into a very good financial position, we could put the government out of business.
Sure. I think that's the biggest piece for me where when I dream towards the future, it's not so much about me accumulating assets as much as it's, man, wouldn't it be fun to when you hear about your server at the restaurant who's going through a tough time to be able to give them, hey, here's $500, go take care of that. You know what I mean? It's not, I think sometimes when we hear about financial planning, we think, oh, okay, well that's how that, I don't want to be Scrooge McDuck, right? Swimming in my piles of money.
No.
That's not the vision though.
No, the vision is that you build wealth in order to live and give like no one else.
Right.
And that is so true. If you follow it the way we teach it, the way Dave Ramsey's financial piece is set up, and you work with a counselor like us, that's what you're going to get, because that's what we want you to do. We want to be able to give to the church. We want to be able to give to that mom down the street or that lady, and do it. You can do it and do it in anonymous fashion where somebody just has been blessed.
Right.
I mean, Dave tells a lot of great stories about that, and there's just a real opportunity to bless people that you just don't understand.
There's another writer who talks, the way he frames it is living your rich life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And obviously we would add in the Christian principles and stuff like that. But
absolutely.
That's the goal. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not about living.
It's not to hold it this way. It's to do it this way.
Yeah, closed fist, open fist, and yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, well, hey, thanks, Steve. Anything you want to kind of plug or promote either to our people or more broadly?
I would just say, we offer financial peace at least once a year here at Grace Community Church. I would encourage all folks, everybody that attends should think about taking the opportunity to do the 9-week class. There's always nuggets that you're going to pick up. We cover a lot of stuff. It's not just budget. That's part of it, clearly. But we also talk about living and life, insurances, real estate, investing. It covers a broad gamut of information. And it's just another arrow to put in your quiver.
Absolutely.
To arm yourself for a strong life.
Yeah, and nobody's going to twist your arm either. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to show up and it's going to be like...
And then it gives you an opportunity to get to know Steve Nator and I who are doing it right now, and that gives us a chance to maybe we get together and
absolutely
sit down with you and look over your financial plan. I mean, there's no harm in that. Again, like I say, if you don't like what I have to say, that's okay. You don't have to do it, but it works.
Right. Well, hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. The Find and Follow podcast is a production of Grace Community Church of Willow Street. You can join us for weekend services on Saturdays at 6 p.m., Sundays at 8 a.m., 9:15 a.m., and 11 a.m. We are located at 212 Peach Bottom Road in Willow Street, Pennsylvania, 17584. My name is Pastor Addison Roberts, and I host the Find and Follow podcast as the digital ministry pastor here at Grace Community Church. We're so glad to have you join us. Be sure to share these episodes with your friends if you find them helpful.